September made liars of anyone who believed it. 4 months ago, a 5-goal demolition at the Metropolitano convinced an entire footballing continent that something fundamental had shifted in the Madrid hierarchy, that Atletico had cracked the code, that Diego Simon had finally discovered the architectural flaw in the empire across town. Tonight in Jeddah, that belief collapsed under the weight of 90 minutes that reminded everyone what Real Madrid actually are when the stakes stop being about league points and start being about elimination. Core analysis. The September result was seductive in its simplicity. A dominant scoreline, a humiliated opponent, Julian Alvarez scoring twice and looking like the signing of the decade, everything aligned to tell a story that was comfortable and easy to repeat. Atletico had figured it out. Real Madrid were vulnerable. The balance of power in the Spanish capital had tilted. But there was always a flaw in that narrative. League matches carry different psychological currencies than knockout football. In September, Real Madrid could absorb a loss and continue their campaign. Tonight, absorption was not an option. Tonight, defeat meant departure. And if there is one thing this club has demonstrated across decades of European and domestic football, it is that they metabolize elimination pressure differently than almost any institution in the sport. The illusion that died tonight was not about tactics or personnel. It was about identity. Atletico approached this semifinal carrying the confidence of a team that believed they had discovered something essential about their rivals. That belief became a liability, because what they discovered in September was not a permanent vulnerability, it was a momentary lapse. And momentary lapses do not survive the furnace heat of knockout football against opponents who have 15 European Cups in their trophy cabinet. Consider what Real Madrid were missing for this fixture. Kylian Mbappé, their leading scorer, their most explosive attacking threat, the centerpiece of their summer investment, was absent with a knee injury. By conventional logic, this should have widened Atletico's advantage. Instead, it exposed a different truth. Real Madrid without Mbappé are not a diminished version of themselves, they are simply a different version. And that different version still possesses something that cannot be purchased or coached into existence. Thibaut Courtois embodied this quality throughout the match. The Belgian goalkeeper made interventions that defied probability at critical moments. A header from Sorloth that seemed destined for the net. A volley from Griezmann that required reflexes operating at the edge of human capability. A curling effort from Laurent in the dying minutes that missed the post by centimeters after Courtois had shifted his position just enough to influence the trajectory. These were not lucky saves. They were expressions of a mentality that refuses to accept the momentum of opponents as something inevitable. But goalkeeping alone does not explain what happened tonight. The deeper truth lies in how Real Madrid absorbed pressure without ever appearing to panic. Atletico had more attempts in the second half. They had more possession in dangerous areas after Sorloth pulled one back. They created the scenarios that should have produced an equalizer. And yet, there was never a moment when Real Madrid seemed uncertain about the outcome. This is not confidence in the conventional sense. It is something closer to institutional memory, a collective understanding embedded in the DNA of the squad that late-game pressure from opponents is simply a weather pattern that will eventually pass. Xabi Alonso deserves credit for something specific in this match. He recognized that the September defeat was not a tactical problem requiring a tactical solution. It was a mentality problem requiring a mentality adjustment. The lineup he selected was not radically different from what he has deployed throughout the season. The formation was familiar. The personnel choices were predictable. What changed was the psychological instruction. Real Madrid did not try to outplay Atletico tonight. They tried to outlast them, and outlasting is a discipline that requires you to accept discomfort without converting it into anxiety. Antonio Rudiger played through physical discomfort that would have sidelined less committed defenders. The German center-back reportedly told Alonso directly that he would not miss a derby with silverware on the line. He lasted until the 69th minute before his body could no longer comply with his will. But those 69 minutes mattered. His presence in the defensive line created a psychological anchor that younger teammates could orbit around. When he departed, replaced by an improvised defensive configuration, the team did not wobble. They had already internalized what he represented. Atletico's response to falling behind early deserves examination. They did not collapse. They did not retreat into defensive pessimism. They continued pressing, creating, threatening. In almost any other context, their performance would be considered admirable. Sorloth's header to reduce the deficit was executed with the precision of a forward operating at peak confidence. The subsequent push for an equalizer contained moments of genuine quality, but quality was not enough. Because the opponent they were facing had already decided that quality would not be enough. This is the illusion that required demolition. The belief that Atletico had discovered a replicable formula. September was an outlier, not a template. It occurred during a period when Real Madrid were still adjusting to Alonso's methods, when Mbappé's integration was generating friction, when the institutional confidence that usually insulates this club had temporarily wavered. None of those conditions existed tonight. The adjustment period has concluded. The integration issues have been resolved not through Mbappe's presence but through his absence, forcing others to step forward. The institutional confidence has returned. Federico Valverde opening the scoring within 60 seconds was not merely a fortunate event. It was a statement of intent delivered so early that Atletico had no time to settle into their tactical structure. A free kick from distance, executed with venom and precision, bypassing the wall and finding the net before the match had established any rhythm. This kind of start does not happen by accident. It happens because a team arrives at a venue having already decided that hesitation is unacceptable. Atletico were still arranging themselves mentally when the ball was already nestled in their net. Rodrigo's contribution extended the lead at a moment when Atletico had begun to establish control. The Brazilian forward demonstrated patience that belied the urgency of the occasion. He received Valverde's pass, manipulated Lenormand with a feint, accelerated past the recovery challenge, and finished with composure against a black. This was not a goal born from desperation or luck. It was a goal born from superiority, from a player understanding that when opportunities arise against Atletico, you must execute with clinical precision because they will not offer many. The final 30 minutes contained everything that makes knockout football intolerable for the team trailing. Atletico threw bodies forward. They created half chances that became quarter chances that became no chances at all. Courtois collected crosses with authority. Clearances found touch when they needed to find touch. Substitutes entered and immediately understood their defensive responsibilities. There was no heroic equalizer. There was no dramatic penalty. There was only the relentless ticking of minutes until the outcome became official. Diego Simón has constructed something legitimate in Atletico Madrid over his years in charge: a cultural identity, a competitive resilience, a refusal to be intimidated by names and histories. But tonight exposed a limitation that no amount of tactical sophistication can address. When Real Madrid decide they will not lose a knockout match, the tools Atletico possess become insufficient, not because those tools are defective, but because the opponent has access to something that exists beyond the reach of preparation. Julian Alvarez, so devastating in September, spent this evening searching for spaces that never quite materialized. His final opportunity in stoppage time, a low shot that slid wide of the post, summarized the frustration of a player who knew he was capable of more but could not find the moments to express it. This was not a failure of effort or talent. It was a failure of the universe to cooperate. Real Madrid had arranged reality in a configuration that excluded Atletico's aspirations. The path to the final now leads directly to Barcelona. The reward for surviving this derby is the opportunity to face opponents who demolished Athletic Club by 5 goals in the other semifinal. Some will argue that fatigue and the psychological expenditure of tonight will disadvantage Real Madrid. They may be correct, but they may also be underestimating what this club accesses when trophies are visible on the horizon. Xabi Alonso entered this competition with his position reportedly under scrutiny. A defeat tonight might have concluded his tenure before it truly began. Instead, he has purchased additional time and opportunity. Whether that opportunity converts into silverware remains undetermined. But the transaction itself, surviving a Madrid derby in a knockout format without his most expensive player, represents a kind of victory that extends beyond the final scoreline. What died in Jeddah tonight was a comforting fiction. The fiction that September revealed some permanent truth about these two clubs, it did not. It revealed a momentary alignment of circumstances that favored Atletico. Those circumstances no longer exist. The alignment has shifted, and Real Madrid have reminded everyone why temporary results should never be confused with permanent realities. Atletico will return to domestic competition with legitimate ambitions still intact. Their league campaign continues. Their European prospects remain viable. Nothing about tonight diminishes what they have constructed, but everything about tonight clarifies what they have not yet accomplished. They have not broken the psychological hold that Real Madrid maintains over high-stakes encounters. They have not demonstrated that September was anything more than an exception. They have not proven that the hierarchy has changed. The hierarchy has not changed. Final verdict. Real Madrid did not play better football tonight. They simply understood what kind of match this actually was, and Atletico discovered too late that understanding matters more than performance. Extended reflection. There is something instructive about how narratives form in football and how quickly they collapse when tested by consequential matches. After September, the conversation shifted with remarkable speed. Atletico had solved the puzzle. Simón had evolved beyond his defensive constraints. Real Madrid were aging, mentally soft, unable to handle opponents who attacked with conviction. These conclusions felt reasonable at the time. They were supported by evidence. They made sense within the context of what had just occurred. But context is fragile, and conclusions drawn from single matches, regardless of how emphatic those matches appear, often reveal themselves as premature when the calendar provides new examinations. Tonight was such an examination, and the answers it produced contradicted nearly everything that had been assumed since the autumn. Perhaps the most significant revelation concerns what Real Madrid actually possess when their institutional survival instinct activates. This is not a metaphor, it is an observable phenomenon. There exists a gear within this club that only engages when the alternative is departure from competitions. Some organizations crumble under elimination pressure, others maintain their standard level. Real Madrid appear to exceed their standard level. As if the proximity of failure clarifies rather than clouds their collective judgment. Atletico will have opportunities for redemption. The season contains sufficient fixtures for them to demonstrate that tonight was merely a setback within a larger narrative of progress. But those opportunities will arrive without the psychological advantage they carried into Jeddah. The advantage of being the team that had already proven they could dismantle their rivals. That advantage no longer exists. It evaporated over 90 minutes in a stadium 3,000 miles from home. For neutrals observing this rivalry, tonight offered a reminder about competitive sport that extends beyond any single fixture. Dominance in one encounter guarantees nothing about dominance in subsequent encounters, especially when the stakes escalate, especially when one opponent carries institutional memory that spans generations, especially when elimination transforms the entire emotional landscape of a competition. Real Madrid marched toward Barcelona carrying knowledge that will serve them regardless of what happens in the final. The knowledge that they can function without Mbappé. The knowledge that their goalkeeper remains capable of match-defining performances. The knowledge that their young attackers can deliver when the pressure would crush lesser talents. The knowledge that Xabi Alonso, whatever doubts surrounded his appointment, can prepare a team for the most hostile competitive environment. Atletico returned to Spain carrying different knowledge, not knowledge of failure exactly, but knowledge of limitation. Knowledge that September's triumph did not represent a permanent shift. Knowledge that their rivals, even in reduced form, remain capable of producing the margins that matter in knockout football. This knowledge is valuable though painful. It strips away comfortable illusions and forces confrontation with reality as it actually exists rather than as it might be hoped to exist. The illusion is dead, what remains is clarity.